Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I hope to finish lecture three today. We don't have a lot um, more slides to go, but we will take some notes today, and hopefully we can finish, and it will give us some time to perhaps do some of the questions from the study guide. Um, just a quick recap of what we did last class. Um, we know that immunity is the ability for the body to defend itself against pathogens. Pathogens are things like bacteria, viruses, fungus, parasites, these living organisms that could invade the body and make us sick. So the immune system is there to kind of fight them off, right? And we know that there are two main branches of immune system. We have the innate immunity, which is something that you are born with, and it doesn't really change throughout the course of your life. And there are various mechanisms associated with innate immunity. Um, there are barriers. Okay, and for barriers, we have physical or chemical barriers. And the purpose of barriers are basically to keep things out of the body, don't let them come in, and therefore they won't cause an infection. For physical barriers, we have things like intact skin, mucous membrane, and these microorganisms that live on us and in us, they take up so much space that the harmful ones will not be able to attach onto our surfaces. And we call these beneficial microorganisms, we call them normal floras. For chemical barriers, we have things like lysozyme, which is like an antibacterial enzyme that is found in saliva, tears, and sweat. We also have acid in the stomach, right, that creates a low pH environment, right? So these are barriers. And what's another thing that we talked about? Just anything that doesn't have to be in the same order that we talked about it. Anything that you remember at all. Another innate mechanism. Nope. No one remembered anything from from last week. That's all right. Another one we talked about would be inflammation. Inflammation, right? The purpose of inflammation is to recruit more white cells and plasma proteins. And the key things to remember here, key terms to remember would be histamine, right? Histamine released by mast cells. And that's going to trigger the inflammatory response with the vasodilation. I'm just going to write it down for you. Vasodilation makes the blood vessels bigger and it increases permeability. So it's easier for the white cells and the plasma proteins to exit the blood vessels when they get to the site of injury. Okay, so that's inflammation. Of course, we also talk about the hallmarks and the characteristics of inflammation. There's going to be pain, redness, swelling, and heat associated with it. Yeah. The next one is, thank you, Elvis, is the phagocytes and the NK cells, right? So phagocytes, okay, and NK cells. Okay, so phagocytes includes macrophages, and neutrophils. Okay, so remember the macrophages can secrete colony stimulating factors to increase WBC production at the bone marrow. Phagocytes are cells that could do phagocytosis. Okay, so phagocytes are cells capable of phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is like, here's your cell, here's a bacterium, and then it's gonna basically like eat it, right? Like that. Okay, so not all white cells can do this. Macrophage and neutrophils can do it. Right? Mast cells cannot do it, for example. We also have NK cells. NK cells is natural killer cells. That's what they're actually called. And their job is to kill infected cells. If a cell is infected with a virus, it's going to kill it. And also tumor cells, right? Okay, good. Yeah, someone just mentioned, yeah, this acid is like stomach acid. Yeah, very good. All right, so we did all these last week, all right? If it sounds new to you, maybe watch the recordings, right, from last class. All right. So what else do we have? Two more things? Is anything at all? Did you guys write down the notes? Let's do it. There are two more mechanisms associated with innate immunity. That's right, fever. Right? Fever. I'm gonna put fever here as it was the last one we talked about, and the function, yeah, and complement proteins, very good. Okay, so complement proteins are made in the liver. We talk about three functions. So like key function is to synergize other immune responses. And it could, for example, leave a chemical trail for WBC to follow. It could tag pathogens to make it easier for phagocytes to identify. Okay, like the finding the Waldo, right? Example I gave you. And lastly, they could form membrane attack complex to punch holes in bacteria, in bacterial cell wall, and kill them. Okay, so those are the three key functions of complement proteins. Fevers, it increases metabolism, increase WBC activity, right? Increase phagocytosis, right? Decreases viral and bacterial activities. Okay, so there you have it. All these are part of the innate immunity. Okay, we are born with it. Um, it's built into our genes. It does not change throughout your lifetime. And they are general defenses. They're not tailored to a particular kind of pathogens. It's just like a blanket protection, right, against a wide range of harmful things. Right? For the most part, they're okay. Right? The innate immunity does a good job keeping us from getting sick, but every now and then it fails. Every now and then it fails. Then we're gonna need the second branch, which we have not talked about yet, and it will be the main topic for today. It is called acquired. Okay, meaning you have to get it, you have to develop it throughout your lifetime, and also known as adaptive immunity. And not only do you have to acquire it and develop it throughout your lifetime, as you develop it, it's able to change and evolve over time. Michael asked if it's like vaccines. We'll talk about vaccines later. Vaccines can trigger adaptive immunity, uh, but it wouldn't be, um, it's not equal to adaptive immunity, but it's able to cause you to create adaptive immunity. We'll talk about that towards the end of the class. All right. Everybody okay? Before I jump into today's lesson, the acquire adaptive immunity. That's what we'll be talking about. Lots of writing as usual. Already. So let's switch to the PowerPoint for a second. There we go. If innate immunity mechanisms, which is like the inflammation, the complement, the fever, all those things we just wrote down, if they do not quickly eliminate an invading pathogen, an infection may become established. By that time, long-lasting mechanisms of adaptive immunity have begun to target the invaders specifically. Okay, so basically what it's saying is if the general defense fails, then we need a more specific tailored solution to deal with the invader. And that is basically the core of adaptive immunity. Now, there are some characteristics of adaptive immunity that I want to highlight. Number one, it has the ability to distinguish self versus non-self antigens. Okay. Now, let me just remind you what antigens are. Antigens are basically molecules found on the surface of a cell. Okay. You have antigens on your cells. I have antigens on my cells. Bacteria have antigens. Red cells have antigens. Viruses have antigens. Okay. There is no good or bad antigens. Antigens are just molecules that are on the surface of a cell. But your immune system has to be able to tell the difference between antigens that are found in your body versus antigens that are found outside of the body, right? So that ability allows the immune system to know what to attack and what to leave alone. Okay. So in this picture, right, everything looks the same is your cells, but one of them stands out. That's the one with the foreign antigen, and that's the one you need to attack. Okay. Um, the other characteristic of adaptive immunity is the ability to form immune memory. Okay. If you fought off some pathogens and recover from it, you keep a file of that pathogens in your system, basically. And so next time you get infected by the same thing, either you won't get sick from it at all, or number two, if you do get sick from it, it will not be as severe. Okay? You'll be able to fight it off much quicker because you already fought it off before. You remember how to fight it. All right? So one example is chicken pox. All right? We only get chicken pox once. If you get chicken pox and you recover from it, or if you get vaccinated for chicken pox, you won't get chicken pox ever again. So that's immune memory. Now, I know you guys might have some questions in your mind. How come, we get the flu and we can get the flu again? And how come I got COVID like 3, 4, 5 times? I thought we have immune memory. Right? We're going to answer all those things towards the end. Let's try to understand more about adaptive immunity first. So number one, ability to distinguish self versus non-self. Number two, able to form long-term immune memory. Next, two things are specificity and diversity. Okay, specificity and diversity. I'll read it to you first and I'll try to explain it. Specificity refers to the ability to respond, form responses to combat specific antigens, whereas diversity means potentially billions of different antigens receptors. All right. Are we okay with the difference between pathogen and antigen? Right, do you guys understand the difference? If not, just, I don't know, put your hand up or something. I'll explain again. Pathogen, antigen. We good with that? Okay, so there's a hand. Let's explain that. So pathogen is the whole bacteria, for example. Bacteria, virus, fungus, fungi, right? Parasites, whatnot. It's the whole thing. So this is, let me do it over here on the no, here. You don't have to draw this. Okay, so this whole thing is a bacterium. Bacterium is singular, bacteria is plural. So this whole thing, pathogen. On the surface of the pathogen, they might have, this purple molecule. They might have some, pink little balls. Okay, and then they might have some whatever, like little crazy things here, there. Okay, so they have all these molecules on them. All right, all these molecules. So these things are called antigen. Antigen. Okay, there is another antigen. Okay, so like your cell, this is your cell. Okay, your cell, you might have your own antigens. Right? You might have this little light blue things, whatever they are. Okay, you might have some green ones. Okay, let's just keep it simple like that, right? Okay. So when a Y cell comes, when a WBC comes, and then it checks out these antigens on the bacterium, it's like, this red one, I've never seen that before. Our cells do not have that. Our cells only have the green one and the blue one. I've never seen this red one. That is a foreign antigen. Okay, so whatever cell it's found on, right, it must not be a good thing to have in the body. Let's create an immune response to attack it. Okay, that's basically what pathogens and antigens are. Pathogens is the bad cell, and then the antigen is something that's on all cells, right? But your white cells has the ability to figure out whether it's an antigen that you already have in your body or not. So specificity is the ability to basically recognize a specific antigen, whereas diversity is the ability to potentially recognize all the different kinds of antigens. To help you understand this, think of a set of screwdrivers. Okay? Each screwdriver is only good for a particular type of screws, right? I don't know what the screwdrivers are called. Like you might have the flat one. I think it's called Phillips or something. Okay, so the flat ones are good for tightening the flat screw. Right? Like if you have one that has one of those like starburst shape, then this one is no good, right? Okay, so that's what specificity refers to. Each screwdriver is only good for one type of screws, generally speaking. But if you have the whole set of screwdrivers, then it doesn't matter what kind of screws you have, you will always be able to find the right screwdrivers for it, right? And that's what diversity is, okay? To put it into the perspective of the immune system, you have the ability to recognize all the bad pathogens out there, okay? COVID, hepatitis, HPV, right? Whatever, it's out there. But you're not gonna call upon those immune response until you have been infected with one of those. Okay, so let's say you get infected with the chicken pox, then you would use a specific type of screwdrivers specifically for the chicken pox screw, so to speak, right? And then you would destroy chickenpox virus. Right? But that response is tailored for chickenpox. If you get infected with hepatitis virus, the chickenpox immunity is no good for the hepatitis. Okay, you will have to create a different response for it. So that's specificity versus diversity. And at the core of adaptive immunity is the ability to produce antibodies. Antibodies. Antibodies are proteins that are Y-shaped. It has a constant region, which is very similar to the handle of the screwdriver. Okay, all the handles are pretty much the same, right? You see, all the handles are the same. Okay, pretty much the same. And then there is the variable region out here. Variable region. That's the part where it will bind to a foreign antigen. So for example, this orange virus here has these little pentagon antigen, right? That's an antigen, viral antigen, because it's on the virus. Then you would need an antibody that has pentagon grooves at the end to bind to it. If there is a bacterium with these semicircle antigens, those are bacterial antigen, then you would need an antibody with semicircle grooves at the end, right? So this antibody on the right is only good for the bacteria. It will do nothing for the virus because the groove won't fit. Similarly, this one will only be useful, effective against the virus. It will do nothing for the bacteria. So in that sense, it's like the screwdriver, right? Each screwdriver is good for one type of screw, but if you have the whole set, then you can fight off anything, right? You can, tighten or loosen any screw. All right. So the constant region is the same for all antibodies. The variable regions will you have infinite possibilities, right? Whether it's like pentagon, hexagon, whatever shape. So that's antibodies. Now, what do antibodies do? Antibodies, we actually learned about it already, right? In the when we talked about the Rh incompatibility, we know they can bind to red cells and cause them to burst, right? But in the case of having a virus or bacteria coming into the body, how does antibody help clear it? So I'm going to show you a few ways. They can react with viruses and toxins. Toxins are poisons that are made by bacteria. Sometimes bacteria make you sick because of these poisons that they secrete. You might have heard of botulism, right? It's the bacteria secretes a toxin that causes you to become paralyzed. Okay, so antibodies can basically neutralize these viruses and toxins. So here in the picture, you can see there is a cell, healthy cell, and then we have some bacterial toxins, which will basically kill the cells or damage the cells. But if you have antibodies that will recognize them, they would essentially bind to the toxins and render them neutral. Okay, it's not going to be harmful anymore. Okay? So the antibody binds to the toxins, it won't bind to the cell, and you survive. Over here, we have some viruses that are going to infect the red cells. but with the help of antiviral antibodies, they will bind to the viruses and again, neutralize them. Neutralize them. Okay, so neutralization. Number two, antibodies can bind to the target. Right? So bind to this will be again a bacterium. And if they are coated with antibodies, it makes it easier for phagocytosis to occur. So this is very similar to complement proteins, right? You tag them and it highlights it and it makes it easier for the macrophage and neutrophils to find them and basically eat them quicker. And so there is a little bit of overlap functions between different immune branches. And the antibodies can actually help activate complement. Okay? If a bacteria has antibody binds to it, it actually attracts the complement protein to form those membrane attack complexes that I told you about. Okay? So the complement proteins will come and it will punch holes in the bacterium, and then it will leak over the place and die, basically. So that's why we have to make antibodies. They are like the ultimate weapon of your body. If the antibodies that you make cannot fight off the infection, then you need medication, you need medicine to help you get better. All right, now this this part is like gonna make it even more complicated. Um, so like the pictures I'm showing you so far, like these are actually not to scale, okay? Like if this is the size of the virus, the antibodies are actually smaller than that. And if this is the bacteria, the antibody is like way smaller than that. So I'm just gonna try to explain this this thing with an analogy to help you understand, okay? Um, so how do I do this? You don't have to draw this. This is antigen, which is a molecule that is on the bacteria. So, this like super big bacteria here. Let's try to draw that. Okay, there is the bacteria, basically, okay? Bacterium. And then you have the antigen on it. And on the antigens, there are, you know, uh, grooves and bumps on top of the molecule, and that's actually where the antibodies are going to be binding to. Okay, and so think of an animal. Okay, I'm gonna try to uh, describe an animal to you, and then you're gonna tell me what animal I'm thinking of. Okay, this is gonna help you understand. Right? So just anyway, just tell me. Okay, so I'm thinking of an animal that has a very long nose. Okay? What animal am I thinking of? Long nose, people. I know it's not called a nose, but if you're thinking about elephants, congratulations. Right, you got it right. All right. What about an animal that has a long neck? Long neck. Right, a giraffe. Good. What about an animal that has a tail? Then it could be anything, right? Then it could be anything, right? Yeah, yeah, it could be a lion, could be a cow, could be a dog, could be whatever, right? So what's my point? My point is that there are various features that are on an animal. Some features are more generic. Okay, that means everybody has it. Some are more defining features. And when you have a defining features, you're able to identify the animal very quickly, right? And that is the same when it comes to antibodies. On the antigens, there are many different things you can bind to. Okay, you you can bind to the tail, you can bind to the neck, you can bind to the ears, so to speak, right? And some of these locations are going to be a defining feature of the antigen, like the nose of the elephant, like the neck of a giraffe. Other ones are going to be less defining features. And when it comes to the effectiveness of the antibodies, you want to create an antibodies that will recognize our defining feature. You don't want the antibodies to recognize the tail. Okay? You want it to recognize the nose of the elephant, so to speak. And these different locations that you can recognize, it's called an epitope. So some epitopes, I guess this is my point. Some epitopes are more immunogenic than others. Okay. The more defining the feature is, the more immunogenic it is going to be, and the more effective those antibodies are going to be. All right. So you have all these antibodies. So like this one is not too effective because it only binds with one arm, right? This one is probably pretty effective, pretty effective, pretty effective, right? So you want to be able to create antibodies that would, again, recognize the defining feature of the antigens. And therefore, they are going to bind stronger, and they're going to help you clear the infection much faster. Right? When creating a vaccine, you don't want to be using the tail to create a vaccine, right? So to speak. You want to be using the long neck to create the vaccine, right? And it's going to create more potent antibodies. Okay, so pathogen is the whole bacterium. On the pathogen, there are many antigens, and then on the antigens, there are many epitopes, and that's where the antibodies are going to be tagged. All right. So let's take a look at this. This is a poll questions. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, we're selecting all the correct answers, all of them. Okay, that was a minute. I only have 5 answers, guys. Come on, you gotta click something. You gotta click something, even if you're not sure. Right? Like on a test, you wouldn't leave a multiple choice question blank, right? Would you? I hope not. All right, let's see. We're looking for the correct statements. Antibodies are Y-shaped proteins. That's correct. Antibodies produced against one pathogen will generally work against another pathogen. Not true. Remember the screwdrivers? One screwdriver for one screw. One antibodies for one pathogens. Generally speaking, okay? There are exceptions, which we're going to look at, but generally, what you make for bacteria A is not going to work for bacteria B. C, antibodies are produced by plasma cells. That is true. Okay, I haven't told you that yet. I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have put this question here. But yes, this is true. Okay. If you don't know what plasma cells are, don't worry. We're going to get to that. Antibodies are found in blood plasma. We learned that from the second lecture. Variation in antibodies arise from gene shuffling. Oh, I've been pretty bad. I forgot to tell you about that as well. This is also true. This is also true. What's gene shuffling? Okay, quickly. So like I said, the antibodies are Y-shaped. This part does not change, but the tip changes, right? As you may recall, proteins are encoded by DNA, right? Genes, right? Each gene is going to give you the instruction to build a protein. So antibodies are no different. There are a bunch of genes dedicated for creating antibodies. And so what happens is when you do transcription of those genes, you might remember exon and introns. Depending on which exons you use, you are going to be able to create different shapes for the arms right here. Imagine having 52 cards, okay, playing cards. You shuffle the deck, and every time you deal out 10 cards, right? You're gonna have a lot of different combinations, right? And that's what gene shuffling is, right? You take the dedicated genes for making antibodies, you're gonna randomly select exons to use. Okay, you use exons 1, 5, 7, 9, and 10. That's going to give you one antibodies. You use exon 2, 7, 10, 11, 20, and 27. Right? That's going to give you another antibodies. And by shuffling the genes, you virtually can create literally billions of different combinations to create billions of different antibodies. Okay, so that's what it is. Right? So A, C, D, and E. These are all correct. Any questions before we take a massive note? No, no questions? Okay, I'm gonna take a big note here. You need some colors as usual. I will show you what the note look like, and then you will know how to plan for space, okay? So we're gonna start here, and then we're gonna go over here, and then we're gonna go down, and then, we're gonna do this, all right? So plan ahead for space. You should start on a new piece of paper, that's for sure. Okay, so this is called adaptive immunity. Specifically, we're going to do antibody production. Antibody production. All right. So let's say you have, I'm going to use bacteria as an example, but it's similar when it comes to viral infection. Like I said, people relate better with bacteria for some reason. It's easier for them to visualize. So let's say we have some red bacteria here. And seriously, please use red, okay? The note is not going to make sense if you don't use color. If you only have pencil, like maybe do like, I don't know, do like dotted things or something, okay? Or like do crisscross like that. Whatever, you got to make some way to distinguish this thing. Okay, so what happens if you have bacteria around? Well, remember your innate immunity, right? Innate, okay, you will try to keep them out. So the barriers, you try to keep them out, but it failed. Right? So what happens next? You might have some inflammation. Okay? And then you're gonna have phagocytosis, right? Right, phagocytosis. So what happens is you're gonna have your macrophage here. Neutrophils can eat them, but neutrophils cannot do what I'm about to tell you. Okay, so there's the macrophage. There is the bacterium. And what is it gonna do? It's gonna eat this thing. So that's called phagocytosis. Right? It's literally like Pac-Man. That's correct. Macrophages are activated monocytes. Very good. All right, I'll give you a moment. Right. This is pretty straightforward. It's gonna come, eat the bacterium. You can eat a lot of them, right? How does it know to eat this thing? Well, it has those PAMs on it that we talked about, right? The molecular patterns that are associated with pathogens. So it eats it. Okay, next, it is going to do something called antigen processing. Antigen processing. I'll write down for you first. Macrophage will digest the bacteria, the bacterium, and display bacterial antigens on cell membrane. It's like this. Okay, watch first, and I'll give you time to copy. Okay. It will digest the bacteria and it will put bits and pieces on its surface, on the white cell surface. Okay, it's like it's really proud of eating the bacterium, and it's like, hey, look at what I just ate. Okay, I want to show you. Okay, so these are bacterial antigen. Okay, so this is called antigen processing. Okay, you break down the bacteria and you put some of it on the surface. Okay, it's like they destroy the enemy. Now put them on the spikes. Not all phagocytes can do this, but macrophage can. Okay. Neutrophils do not do that. Neutrophils just eat them and then move on and eat some more. But macrophage will do this. Okay. Copy it down, and I will tell you what it does. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Gonna leave this behind for a little bit. Okay, leave some space, maybe like 4 finger space, and we will go ahead and draw something else here, and then we'll connect the two pictures. Okay. Okay, so here, that is the bone marrow. From the bone marrow, you would produce all kinds of blood cells, right? Red cells, white cells, platelets. We learned this in lecture 2. Hematopoiesis. So you're going to produce all kinds of cells. And the kind of cells that we're interested in right now, they are called naive. Sometimes, you see naive spelled with like 2 dots on top of the I. I'm just going to go with the regular. Naive T cells. Naive T cell. Okay. So naive T cells, like what are they? They are, you can think of them as T cells, naive T cells. They have not been activated yet. Not been activated yet. That's right. Those are the rookies, the newbies. Okay. Each has a unique receptor for recognizing antigens. Okay. So I'm gonna draw a bunch of naive T cells for you. And I hope you have colors, okay? Because I'm gonna use colors to represent the receptor. A receptor is, we learned about receptor last semester, right? So for example, like you might have a receptor that looks like this and it would fit like circle stuff on it. You might have receptor that looks like triangle and it will fit the triangle in it, right? Like the circle is not gonna fit here, right? And the triangle is not gonna fit here. That's what a receptor is, right? It's really hard to draw shapes, so I'm using color instead. So over here, this guy might have like a purple receptor that will recognize purple stuff. This one will have an orange receptor, okay? And then this one will have a red receptor. You can use whatever colors you want, but you have to have one, for the purpose of the notes, you have to have one that matches the bacterial color, okay? And then we'll have one for like light blue or something like that. Okay, so these are naive T cell. You're gonna have a pool of these naive T cells, and then you would have a receptor on them. Now, I don't know if you remember this because we only mentioned it briefly in lecture 2. These T cells will actually go to the thymus, right, in front of the heart, the thymus, and then they have to pass a tolerance test, right? If some of these receptors recognizes your own cells, you have to kill them off. Okay, about 5% will pass and they will be able to come out. But that's what naive T cells are. Okay, each of them is equipped with a receptors that would detect a particular kind of antigens. Don't, this sounds really weird from a teacher, right? Like, don't read about these things online. I'm, lowering the complexity significantly. If you read it online, it's gonna like confuse you, okay? So just stay with the story I'm telling you. That's enough for our purpose. If you read it on like some immunology textbook or whatever, it's like much more complicated. Are we okay though so far? Any questions about what's going on? All right. Remember our macrophage? It ate the bacterium, it puts bits and pieces of bacterial antigens on it, and now it's gonna come over here and it's gonna show it to these naive T cells. Okay. So this one's come over and it's been like, hey, look, I ate this red bacteria and it's invading the body. Do you think you can help fight it off? And then what will this naive T cell say? Well, this naive T cell is like, hey, I only got the weapons to fight off the purple ones. It's not gonna be useful for fighting off the red ones. Okay? So this is no good. And then our macrophage will go visit another naive T cell. It's like, hey, can you help fight with the invading red bacteria? And then this guy will say, nope, I only have receptor for the orange kind. So it will move on and it will keep on checking and checking until it finds the correct naive cells, right? So the naive T cell, let me zoom in a little bit. The naive T cell with the correct receptor will be chosen by the macrophage and it will undergo clonal expansion. Okay, I'll tell you what that is in a second. And furthermore, this process of like presenting the bacterial antigen to these naive T cells, showing it to them and trying to find the right cells to help fight it off. Okay, this is called antigen presentation. Okay, showing bacterial antigen to naive T cell. Okay. I'm gonna put a star here. Cells that can cells capable of antigen presentation are called antigen presenting cell, okay, or APC. Macrophages are APC, okay? But neutrophils are not. It's not able to do this. So, people might get a little bit confused with all these new names. Um, Previously, we were saying, oh, macrophage is able to do phagocytosis, so we will say it is a phagocyte. Okay, but now all of a sudden, we are also calling it an APC. Right? Remember, it's okay to have multiple description for these cells, right? Depending on what context. Right? So the macrophage is a granulocyte, and at the same time, it is a phagocyte, and it can also be an APC, an antigen presenting cell, right? There's no conflict with these labels, right? Like you can be a father and a son at the same time, and also, be a student, right? Or you might be like whatever, right? Like an uncle, right? So there's many different labels depending on what situation. So that's exactly what these are talking about. Yeah, husband, exactly. Thank you. Right, so APC, uh, phagocytes, granulocytes. Okay, it's just different labels describing the function of the cell. Are we okay with the story so far? Anything you want me to clarify before I tell you more? Okay, thank you. All right. What's going to happen to our chosen one? Our naive T cells with the correct receptor? It's going to undergo clonal expansion. Clonal expansion. So this is what's going to happen. This is going to be selected. And what stimulate the production of naive T cell? Okay, that is a question. Yeah. So in the bone marrow, you're always making new cells. Okay, so the naive T cells are always being produced because you always need to have a pool of these things. Okay, you never know when you're gonna be infected by the purple bacteria, right? So it's good to have that in the pool, right? It's like constantly creating a whole set of screwdrivers. You never know when you're gonna need which one. Okay, but in reality, um, if you make the purple one and the purple one didn't get chosen, then actually it's gonna die off, right? So then you will replace it with like another one, right? And this pool of naive T cells, the population is always changing, right? So it's possible for you to be infected by the red bacteria, but you don't have a naive T cells with the red receptor at this moment. In those instances, it will take longer for your immune system to fight off the infection because you got to wait for it, right? So you have a pool of T cells and you're always like refreshing it, okay? And if you're lucky, whatever you get infected with, you already have those naive T cells available, okay, to be chosen by the APC. Does that make sense? So we're not like stimulating the production of naive T cells per se. It's always there, these naive T cells. Okay, but like we have to choose them for the occasion. I hope that answers your question. All right, clonal expansion basically means it's going to undergo mitosis and it's going to make an army of these things. And you can draw them, but I'm lazy, so I'm just going to clone them, okay? It's going to make lots and lots of copy of these things. There you go. Okay. So there you go. You have a bunch of them. All right, let me try to make them a little bit smaller so it fit. There you go. Okay, so this is called clonal expansion. It's basically mitosis. I'll write down for you. Undergo clonal expansion. Okay. The chosen naive T cell makes many copies of itself through mitosis. But they are still naive, okay? They're not, they can't fight yet. They cannot fight yet. So what's going to happen next? Well, these guys will transform, will differentiate into one of four things. Okay, one of four things. Let's do two first and then we'll do more. Okay, so the chosen naive T cell makes many copies of itself through mitosis, and then each of these copies will transform into something. Okay? So what can it transform into? Okay. It can transform into cytotoxic, also known as killer T cell, not to be confused with natural killer. Natural killer cells are part of innate immunity. These killer T cells or cytotoxic T cells, they are part of adaptive immunity. Okay, so we're gonna have the naive T cells, and I'm gonna give this guy, I don't know, like a gun or something. Okay, to help fight off the infection. All right, so there we go. You know what? Let's give it a sword instead. There we go. Let's go all medieval times. Okay, so a sword and a shield. This is a cytotoxic or killer T cell. Okay, And what it does is it will kill infected cells. It sounds very similar to natural killer cells, yes, but again, it's different branches. So they will kill infected cells. All right. So some of the naive cells will become that. What else can it become? It can become, it can become, I'm not doing this in any particular order, okay? Like I'm just doing it so that it fits into the space. Okay, this one I'm gonna do like a little bubble here, like a thought bubble. Okay, okay, and this one is a memory cell. Okay, memory T cell. This is actually what happens. Okay, it sounds like, you know, like something I make up, but it's not. This is actually what happens in the body. Memory T cells, what do they do? Well, as the name implies, they will stay in the body. Stay in the body for a very long time. In case the same pathogen invades again. If you get infected by the same thing again in the future, memory cell will remember it and it will jumpstart the immune response next time. Right? In case again, again, memory T cell can jumpstart immune response for the same pathogen. Okay. With stronger and quicker response. Right. So, like I said, you might not even get any symptoms from it. And if you do, it might be very mild symptoms. Instead of out for a whole week, you might be okay after 1 or 2 days. That is because of memory cells. They remember. Okay. So if you fought off, I don't know, I keep on thinking chickenpox because people are familiar with it. Okay. If you fought off chickenpox before somewhere in your body, swimming around, I guess. It's a memory cell for that. All right, so we got the warrior here. We got the thing that will remember. There are two more. Okay. Okay, this next one, this guy is going to be holding a stop sign. Okay. We don't need to stop this yet, but eventually we will have to. This is called a suppressor T cell. Suppressor T cell. And as the name implies, it is going to suppress. It's going to stop the immune response. Not now, but like later, right? When you kill all the pathogens. Suppresses immune system, immune response when pathogens are cleared. All right. You don't want this clonal expansion to keep on happening, right? Then you have uncontrolled white cell division. That's like, leukemia, right? We don't want that. Gonna stop the immune activity when the bacteria or virus or whatever it is that's invading you is cleared. Okay. All right, we have another one coming our way. This is the last one, all right? This is helper T cell. Okay, very happy helper T cell. I'll just give it like a really big helping hand here, okay? That's a hand. You can probably draw a better hand. Okay. This is helper T cell. Helper T cell. And I will tell you what the helper T cell does when we come back, because we still have quite a bit of way to go with the note, and I've been talking for too long. So let's take a break. Okay, 9:45, and we will resume. I'll move it over here a little bit, zoom out, in case you missed anything. All right. See you guys in a bit. Okay, let's continue with part two of this epic journey and fighting off the red bacteria. All right, so after the APC, after the macrophage have selected the correct naive T cell, it will undergo clonal expansion, and then it will become one of these four things. Okay, so these, uh-oh, let's see if it's gonna work now. This part here, that involves the T cells, we have a name for this. Okay. Sorry, I gotta restart the program again. Okay, so this branch that involves all the T cells, this is called, I gotta find the right color here. This is called cell-mediated immunity. Okay. Cell-mediated immunity. Okay. And it involves all the T cells. Okay. I'll write this down for you again later, but I just want to give you the terms ahead of time. These things that it becomes, oops, the killer T cell, memory T cells, suppressor T cell, and the helper T cell, these are called the effectors of the T cells. I'll write it down for you later. Just want to mention that briefly right now. Okay, so what's next? Well, back to our bone marrow for a second. Back to our bone marrow for a second. In addition to churning out these naive T cells, it will also be creating naive B cells. Naive B cells. We wrote a note earlier, lecture two, first class of lecture two. There are different types of lymphocytes. There is the T cells and the B cells, right? That's what this is, the naive B cells. And the naive B cells is also going to be a pool of these cells, pool of naive B cells, but instead of receptors, they have the ability to make different antibodies. Okay, so you might have one that makes orange antibodies, you might have one that is capable of making green antibodies, so on and so forth. And if you are fortunate, we will have one that can make the red antibody as well. Okay. So naive B cells, they are again similar to naive T cells here, has not been activated yet. Yeah, right for you, not been activated. That's why they're naive. right? Not been activated yet. It's like we call kids, we call them naive, right? They haven't seen the evils of the world, so to speak. Same thing. These naive B cells, they have not encountered the dangers of the, invading pathogens yet, so they're not ready to fight. They have not been activated yet. Each has the ability to produce one type of antibody. Okay. So what's going to happen is the helper T cell will essentially be doing the same thing that the APC did. It is going to come and, check with these cells and see which one is appropriate. Okay, so again, it's going to check with this one, and obviously it's not going to work, not going to work, not going to work. And then this one is the selected one. And you kind of know the rest of the story now, right? If it's being chosen, then it's going to go clonal expansion. Clonal expansion. So we're going to make many copies of this thing through mitosis. There we go. Like that. And they will be able to transform again. They will be able to transform. They will be able to differentiate. But this time only two choices. Okay? Only two choices. Okay, so what can it become? Once again, it can become a memory cell. Okay, memory cell. But it's a different kind of memory cell. Right? It's not memory T. You probably can guess the name. Right? This one is the memory B. Memory B cell. Okay? It has a similar job as T cell. Right? So memory T cell will allow you to bypass this selection process, and then it will just jump directly to making these T cells. Whereas memory B cell will allow you to skip this second part here, and then it will allow you to make the products here. Okay, so that's the memory B cell. I'm not going to write down. It's the same thing. And then the other one here is it will become this plasma cell. Okay, this plasma cell is basically antibody factory. Okay, so this is plasma cell. The function of the plasma cell is to mass produce antibodies. Okay, so it's gonna pump them out like candies from a candy factory. There we go. And what will the antibodies do? Well, they are specifically chosen for this occasion, for this red bacteria infection. And so what they will do is they will neutralize. We have this in the PowerPoint, right? Neutralize toxins. If the bacteria produce toxins, it will, number two, tag the bacteria and enhance phagocytosis. They can, number three, activate complement to form membrane attack complexes, right? So all these things, all these activities from the antibodies combined with, the inflammation, maybe a little bit of fever and other immune responses, hopefully will be enough to clear the infection and you'll be feeling normal and healthy again in a few days. Okay. So that's why it takes some time before your illness kind of turns around in most cases, because it takes time to select for the T cells and it takes time to select for the B cells and do the mitosis and make these antibodies. And it's basically a race against time. Are you able to come up with these antibodies before the pathogens make you very sick, right? If you're able to, then you feel better. If not, then you get worse and worse, and then you need help, right? With medicine and other medical interventions, right? So I just want to relate this to what we were learning in lecture two. This whole thing does not have to be triggered by bacteria. I keep on telling you, right? This whole thing can be triggered by any foreign antigen, such as RH. If this is an RH negative person, instead of bacteria, they might have, you don't have to draw this, they might have RH positive cells coming in, right? Then the macrophage will, eat one of these RH positive cells. It will put the RH on the surface, and then it will come over and look for naive T cells with an RH receptor. That will be chosen, and then we'll do clonal expansion, and then you will make all these cells. Okay, the cytotoxic T cells might kill the RH positive cells. The memory T cells will remember. That's why for the future, if you do an RH positive transfusion again, your body will remember it, and right away it would start all these reactivity against the incoming T cells, right? Along with the anti-RH antibodies. Okay, so this immune response is not just for bacteria. Same thing for viruses, same thing for other foreign antigens. Okay, and so this branch here that involves just the B cells, we have another name for these things. This is called antibody mediated immunity. I don't know if I've used this word before in my test questions, just in case. Okay? It is also called humoral immunity. Right? So there are two key branches here. Cell mediated, it's the T cells. We wrote down over here, cell mediated. And over here we have antibody mediated immunity. Okay. That's the story of how to produce antibodies. All right, let me just do a quick summary here for you in case all the pictures get confusing. Basically, you have naive T cell and you need to activate them. Okay. So what cell is necessary to activate a naive T cell? What is the name of the cell that will go choose the naive T cell to clone themselves? You have it right in front of you, right? I hope that you have been copying the notes. That's right. We need an APC, an antigen presenting cell, such as macrophage. There are other APCs that we have not talked about, but they're there. So you choose them, and then it can become the list, right? Cytotoxic, T cell, um, helper T cell, memory T cell, and suppressor. Okay? These are called effector cells. If I ask you which of the following are effector cells of naive T, these are it. Okay? And this process is called differentiate. Okay, differentiation. Anytime a cell undergoes like a one-way transformation, we say differentiate. Like the monocyte differentiate into macrophage. Like those stem cells we learned last semester, differentiating into different types of tissue. Okay, what about naive B cell? What do we need to activate the naive B cell? Mm-hmm. Helper T cell. Helper T cell. And then it will become plasma cell, which are the antibody factories, or memory B cell. Okay, so these are effector cells as well, but for the naive B. Again, it's called differentiation. Okay. So, what is the link between innate immunity and adaptive immunity? Remember, all these things that we've drawn, this is adaptive immunity. It evolves over time, right? And you need to be exposed to the thing in order to develop it. So, what connects the innate immunity? Oh boy. The innate immunity with the adaptive immunity, well, actually, is the APC, the macrophage. Okay, is the macrophage. Without the macrophage, the link is broken. You don't have a way to activate adaptive immunity. We'll see that later on in the lecture. People with HIV, the virus specifically target and kill macrophages. Without the macrophages, you cannot create adaptive immune response. And that makes you immunocompromised, right? We'll learn that later. Similarly, without the activation of T cell, you cannot get the helper T cell. And without the helper T cell, you cannot activate a naive B cell. Right? It's like dominoes, right? One event leads to the next. And if you have broken links in between, then you cannot complete the process. Okay, that's it for this note for now. We have another big note coming up in about, I don't know, 10 minutes. Any questions though? You guys are like awfully quiet. Am I confusing you guys? Information overload. Just a lot to write down. Yeah, I know. I know. Okay, I'll of course post that. Let's see what's coming up, right? For our course, I don't actually remember. It's hard to keep track sometimes with several courses going on. So I gotta open the calendar. It is coming. There we go. So we are The 27th today, right on schedule. I think we can finish immune system, no problem. We'll do respiratory system Wednesday, and then following Monday. And then next Wednesday, you will have to submit your lab quiz. All right. And I think the lab quiz should be available after February 3rd. Okay. I don't want to turn that on too early because then you need to learn the respiratory system first, right? So, but that's something that's going to be due. And then you're going to have the test on Friday, February 7th. Okay. So I know that is not our regular scheduled day, but that way you will have some more time to study. Do you guys actually have class on Friday? Not with me. Like, yeah, comm class. Some of you do. Yeah, but comm class is not the whole day though, right? It's just like a couple hours, I think. Yeah. So that's what's going to be happening. So if you don't have class, even better. All right. But we will have to start the new unit before the final test. It's really packed schedule. Okay. Anyway, so the lab quiz is the only thing that's coming up. And to prepare for that, I told you already, you just have to work on the PowerPoint deck, right? Slide deck for the lab. Right? If you have trouble accessing it or if you don't know where to find it, just send me a message. Okay. Already. Let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Now, we did the antibody production. We're going to talk about vaccines in a bit, but there are a lot of misconceptions about vaccines out there, and we have people who don't believe in vaccines because of some of these misconceptions. So I just want to see what you guys think about these questions. Uh, so just choose something, and then I will tell you what the right answer is. Okay. Is it possible to get the flu from the flu shot? It's anonymous. Just choose something. I'm curious to know what people think. My mother always say, I don't want to get the flu shot because, some years ago I got the flu shot and then I have the flu the following day. And she thought it's the flu shot. Is she correct? What do you think? Anyone else? Come on, choose something, guys. Do you guys not see the poll? All right. Anyways, you can have your own thoughts. Uh, of the people who chose something, 60% of the class think it is true, and the rest of the class think it is not true. Um, okay, I'm gonna tell you what is the correct answer, and if you don't believe me, that's okay. You can do your own research and find out. It is possible to get the flu from the flu shot. This is not true. This is false. Okay. A flu shot and many other vaccines, they either contain dead or attenuated. Attenuated, this is an N, okay, attenuated viruses in them. Dead is dead, okay, and attenuated means weakened. Weakened. So dead viruses obviously cannot cause illnesses, and attenuated, the weakened form also cannot cause illnesses. Okay, it's like they take the virus, but then they remove the disease-causing portion, right? And then they create a vaccine from it. So it is not possible to get the flu or to get COVID from the flu or COVID vaccine. Okay. So how do you explain my mom's situation? Right? How come she get the flu shot and then the next day she had the flu? She probably caught the flu already at the time. she get the flu shot. She might get sick from, I don't know, from the supermarket or something. She already had the virus in her. And at that point, getting the flu shot is not going to help her, right? Okay. And then the next day she got sick from the contraction. It's just by chance that she got the shot, and then she got sick the next day. It's not because of the flu shot, it's because of exposure to flu through other means, right? Does that make sense? So let's see. Yeah, shot already exactly right. When they get the shots, they were already infected with whatever virus they are talking about. Okay. And based on what I taught you today, I hope you understand this whole adaptive immunity takes time. Okay. If you get the flu shot, you're not going to get protected by the shot right away. It takes time to develop the immunity. Right? Sometimes it might be 4 days, 5 days, or even a week. So during that period, you are still susceptible of catching the flu. Okay. And so if you do get sick during that period, it's not because of the flu shot. It's because of, you catching it from other people, perhaps. Okay. Again, that's the truth. And if you don't believe it, that's okay. You do your own research and you try to be informed. Next one. I'm just gonna leave it up and see if you guys can choose something. Okay. Anyone else? We'll get more response this time. Okay. Everyone who participated, uh, say that this is false. And that is correct. Okay. You learned from last semester, mRNA is a copy of DNA, right? And mRNA are not permanent. Okay. And there's no way the RNA can change your DNA, right? But that was a concern for many people. They're injecting genetic material into the body. It's going to change your DNA, and therefore, it's a like a almost like a eugenic process for some people, right? They think, but it's not true. Right? So how the mRNA vaccine works is basically the vaccine contains a strand of mRNA, which codes for some of the proteins, some of the antigens that you will find on the actual COVID virus. Okay, and then it basically targets your APC. The mRNA goes into the APCs, and then you will make these COVID proteins on the surface. Okay, and then the APC basically shows it to your naive T cells and the whole thing that we drew. And in the end, you would produce antibodies that would recognize these COVID proteins. Okay, so when you do get infected by the COVID virus, the SARS-CoV-2, that's what the name is, with the actual proteins, you be ready. You already have the antibodies for it. You have the memory cells for it, right? So it's not that you're not going to get infected by the COVID virus, but you're not going to get as sick from it. And that was the whole point. The whole point was to, minimize hospitalization. So, not everybody is going to go and overwhelm the ER, right? Okay, so that's that. How about next one? I guess this one I already kind of told you from the first one, right? Vaccines contain live viruses or bacteria. Some do. Okay, so it could, but if it does, it's going to be like a weakened form of the virus or weakened form of the bacteria. Okay. If you have kids, you might have taken them for routine immunization. And one of the things that they give them on the yellow card is for rotavirus. It's the one they put in the mouth rather than like injecting it. They give them a little bit of drops and they eat it. That one is live bacteria, but they're a weakened form of it. Okay. Some flu shots, they have live viruses in it. Live vaccines are the most effective vaccines because it's the closest thing to the real bacterial viruses. So it's the best thing to educate your immune system about it. but they're not suitable for everybody. Right? People who are immunocompromised, people who are pregnant, live vaccines are generally not recommended for them. Okay, this one is a big one. What do you guys think? Some vaccines, particularly the MMR vaccine, can increase the risk of autism in children. All right. Anyone else coming in? Okay, so this is perhaps one of the biggest um, argument points of anti-vaxxers. Okay, and this belief that vaccine can cause autism has to do with one research paper by one scientist, and he's the one who made this claim with data to support his claim. However, it was later found that he faked the data. Okay, the data was fabricated, is not correct. And the journal that published his paper retracted the paper. But that didn't matter because, as they say, the horse has left the barn. Okay. The paper is already out in circulation. And people who believed in this, they think is like a government conspiracy or something, that they only took back the paper because it was true, right? And they didn't want people to know about, to warn about the public about these dangers. Okay. But that's not true. Right? More research were done later to try to find the link between vaccines and autism, and they found no connection at all. So this is absolutely not true. Okay, there's no risks of no increased risk of autism from any of the vaccines. Okay, and again, um, do your research if you are skeptical about this, but it's not true. Okay, hopefully you learned something from that. Now we're going to talk about the different types of adaptive immunity. Okay, and we're going to write another note. One of the favorite things to do in my class, note writing. All right, let's make some more room. Okay, gonna zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this note goes like this. All right, new piece of paper, please. We're gonna start right here. We're gonna do a flow chart, and then we're gonna go have two categories, and then under each category there are two additional categories. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So here we go. Just to backtrack a little bit. Immunity, that's the lesson, topic for lecture 3, immunity. Two types of immunity, right? Innate, which is what you're born with, and then adaptive. Okay? So under adaptive, you have the cell-mediated and humoral. But what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about different ways um, you can acquire the adaptive immunity, different ways you can trigger the adaptive immunity. Okay, and it'll make sense after we write a note. It'll make sense. So here we go. Adaptive immunity. Immunity. There we go. And so we're gonna start with two main categories. Okay. So we're not talking about different branches of in adaptive immunity. Different branches would be the cell mediator and the antibody mediator, right? We're talking about how you trigger the adaptive immunity. And so there are two ways to trigger it. You can trigger it with active, we call it active active adaptive immunity. You know what? I'm just going to put the word active. Active. And I'm sure you know the opposite of active is passive. Oh, I just saw a question in the chat. The question is like this. So people who experience symptoms after getting the shot were already infected beforehand. Okay, okay. Yeah, so I forgot to mention that. When you get the shot, flu shot, COVID shot, whatever, and you afterwards you get a fever and then you feel like not too well for a few days. That is caused by the vaccine, but not because you're getting the actual disease. Okay, when you're receiving a vaccine, you are after all introducing foreign antigens into your system, right? So all those innate things that we talked about, the fever, the inflammation, that's part of what happens when your body's reacting to a foreign antigen, right? And all these activities that you're going through in the body, that could cause you to feel a little bit out of it from the vaccine. Okay. And that's just part of the immune response. It's not the disease that's causing those things. It's the fact that you're receiving foreign antigens into your system. That's that's triggering these things. It just means that the vaccine is working, basically. Okay, okay, back to here. Active immunity versus passive immunity. Okay. So what is active immunity? Active immunity means the host is you, the person who's being infected, okay? The host makes their own antibody, antibodies. You have to go through this whole ordeal of selecting the T cells and the B cells and then making your own antibodies. That's what active means. Because you need to do the selection and the clonal expansion and all that stuff, it is going to take some time. And so it is not immediate, but it will be long term because you are making memory cells. Okay, not immediate protection, but whatever protection you get, it will be long term. For passive, adaptive immunity is the host receive receives antibody that is made by someone else or something else. You didn't make it, you just received the antibodies. So you bypass all those steps in between, and it will be immediate but short term. Okay, immediate but short term. So passive is kind of like cheating on a test. You didn't study. Okay, you get the answer right away, but you didn't learn anything. You're not going to remember anything. It's short term, right? Short term gain, right? Active is like spending the time studying. You're not going to remember the stuff right away, but once you put in the work to study and remember it, it will be long term. Okay. We understand active and passive. It's just basically like, did you make the antibodies or not? That's the key differences. Okay, separating the active immunity, we have two branches. Okay, let's start with natural. Natural. And opposite of natural is artificial or induced. Okay. You triggered it, you deliberately trigger it. So let's do natural first. Natural active. Natural active, I'll give you an example to help you understand. Oh, sorry, I'll describe it first. We have, okay, sorry, there's another question. Chat one, two. Yeah, the test, test one that happens in February or whatever, that's only lecture 2 to 4. Okay, 2 to 4. Number one, you already quizzed it on. You see some questions on the lab quiz, but that's about it. It's not going to be on the test, right? Uh, what was talking about? Natural. Yeah, natural means um, you got sick, recovered, and gain long-term immunity. Okay. My favorite example of this is chickenpox. If you get chickenpox and you recover from it, you're not going to get chickenpox again. You might get shingles, which is caused by the same virus, but let's not talk about that right now. Okay, chickenpox. If you are a little bit older, you probably got chickenpox through natural means. But if you're a little bit younger, you might have received a vaccination for it. Okay, but either way, you develop chicken. Um, if you receive a vaccine, then that's like a different kind of immunity. But if you caught it naturally and you recover from it, and now you have long-term protection, we call that natural active. Okay. When my cousin had chicken pox, the my aunt, she deliberately infected the other sibling with it, so that to get it over with. Right? I think it used to be called chicken pox party. I don't know if you guys heard that before, right? But it's one way to like get it out of the way, right? It's seen as something that you need to catch anyways. So that's natural active, all right? You didn't inject yourself with anything. You just catch it through normal means. Doesn't have to be chickenpox. Every single illnesses that you caught and you recover from it, it will be natural active. All right. Artificial or induced active would be like receiving a vaccination to prevent illness or to reduce severity of illness. Okay, some vaccines are very effective. You get it, then it gives you like 97%, 99% protection. Others, you will still get sick, but not as severe. Okay. So an example of this would be like a flu shot or COVID vaccine. Right? So why do you need a flu shot and COVID shot every year? If it's supposed to produce memory cell? Short answer is the flu virus and the COVID virus, they mutate every year. Okay, they change every year. So every year there are three dominating strains of flu viruses, and the people who make the vaccine they try to predict which ones will be dominating in this upcoming season, and then they make the vaccines based off of the prediction. And sometimes the prediction is a little bit off, and that year the flu shots would be not as effective. Okay. We living in the northern hemisphere, we are able to see what happens in Australia, for example, because they have their winters before us, right? So we can see if the vaccines are effective over there, and it will give us an idea of how effective it will be. Sometimes it's not effective at all. Like it's just like 28% effective. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get it. Like you can still get it. It will offer some protection, but it's limited protection. Okay, same thing with COVID, right? You hear in the news that they're mutating all the time, right? There's new variants of concern, right? So anytime they mutate, the old vaccine's not going to work anymore, and you need to create new ones. Right? So some viruses they mutate a lot, other viruses do not. Okay, like chickenpox virus, they don't mutate too much. Right? So it turns out the chickenpox viruses, they're DNA viruses and they don't mutate too much. It's the same thing, right? Same thing with like, polios and mumps and rubellas and all those things, right? If it's a RNA virus, and like the COVID, for example, then they tend to mutate quite often. Okay, basically, natural means you catch it normally, and then artificial means you inject something into yourself. Both are considered as active immunity because once you are exposed to these foreign antigens, you need to go through the T cell selection and B cell selection and create your own memory cells. A passive is you don't make the antibodies, someone else makes it or something else makes it, and then they inject it into you. So let's take a look at natural passive first, and then we'll do artificial passive. So natural passive is mother to child transfer through what? How does the mother give her antibody to the baby? We learned it in lecture two. That's right, the placenta. Okay, through placenta and so if the baby is still growing in the mother, some antibodies will go through, right? But if the baby is out, then that's right, breastfeeding. So that's one advantage of breastfeeding. When the mother breastfeeds the baby, antibodies are transferred to the baby, giving the baby some protection. Okay. During the pandemic, my sister was pregnant and she was wondering whether it's okay for her to get the COVID vaccine. And then her doctor told her, yeah, you should get it because whatever immunity you have from the vaccine will be transferred to the baby. Okay. But remember, these transfer because the baby did not go through the activation of T cells and B cells, is just receiving the antibodies from the mother. Uh, if the baby comes out and they are not breastfed, then those antibodies will not last, right? And when the breastfeeding stop, the antibody that was already transferred, again, they don't last forever. Eventually, when the kid grow up, they would have to, create their own immunity, right? But during that period, there are some protection. But the protection is not guaranteed because the mother does not choose what antibodies to pass to the baby through the breastfeeding, right? We don't fully understand the mechanism of, what actually gets transferred. So, there might be some element of luck here, right? Like how do you control whether the baby will receive the COVID antibodies and the chickenpox antibodies? There's so many, right? Like it's not a guarantee, but it does offer some protection. Okay. The other one is called artificial, right? Artificial or induced. Okay, so artificial passive. Um, Depends what you want to do. We can use it for prevention or we can use it for treatment. Okay, treatment. Okay, let's do prevention first. Let's say I have to go on a business trip tomorrow, okay, or like in 2 days, even in 2 days. Okay, I gotta fly out to this country in 2 days, and there's some disease over there that I want protection from. I don't have time to get regular vaccination because even if I get vaccinated, it will take a week for the immunity to kick in, right? I have to fly in 2 days. I don't have time for that. Okay. So what are my options? Okay, so you can get what's called a serum. Okay, so serum contains antibodies purified from immune individual. Okay. So, e.g., flying out tomorrow and need protection right away. So as soon as I get the serum injected, the antibodies will be all over me, and now I'm protected for the disease. Okay, so I go on my trip, I'm protected, I'm safe. But then those antibodies being proteins, and I didn't make any memory cells, they won't last forever. They will break down after, a couple weeks or a month, and then I will lose the protection. Right? So if I need to go again next time, I either plan ahead early and get a regular vaccine, so my body makes the immune cells, or I will have to receive another serum. Does that make sense? This can also be used as a treatment. Okay. So, an example of this would be, let's say work in a hospital setting, you're supposed to discard sharp needles and other sharp objects into like a sharp waste bin, right? If accident happens, if you give a shot to a patient who has hepatitis and then you accidentally jab yourself with the needle, then what happens? Well, you are at risk of getting hepatitis now. So, if you didn't have vaccination before, then they are gonna give you a serum with antiviral antibodies in it. Okay. So they put it in your system and it's going to clear any viruses that you potentially have contracted from it. Okay. I had a real experience of this. A couple years ago, I was running outside. It was summer. Okay. I was running and there was a person walking her dogs, two dogs, walking, towards me. The street was pretty wide, okay? So I didn't think to, avoid the dogs or whatever. So I ran past the dogs, and I guess the dog didn't like me the way I was running towards it or something. It jumped up and then it bit me, okay, right in the abdomen, okay, right in the belly, right? And and then I was in shock. I turned around, and then I guess I was because I was running. I had the adrenaline going, and then I didn't really feel it hurt a little bit, but like it wasn't like I got a chunk of meat bit out of me or something, right? So I didn't really stop because I wanted to finish my run. I just turned back and then I just kind of yelled at the person, "Your dog bit at me," right? And then she just looked a little bit, like what? Like, and then anyways, I continued to run. But that's not what you're supposed to do, okay? I found out afterwards if you get bitten by any animals, whether it's domesticated or not, you have to talk to the owner, okay? You have to get the contact information. Because if you get bitten by the dogs, what are you most concerned about? What kind of pathogen? What kind of virus? You guys know? That's right, rabies. Okay, rabies. So anyway, I finished my run. I went home and I, went and took a shower. And then I saw I was actually bleeding from the bite. Okay, from the bite wound. I was like, ah, crap. Okay? This is not good. So I called my doctor, and he's like, I asked him like, should I come in or should I not come in? He's like, well, since you didn't get the information from the owner, like usually, it's safe to assume that the pets are like vaccinated because that's kind of like the law, right? You have to vaccinate your pets, but you don't know, you don't have a contact with the person. Like the dog might have some issues, that's like biting people. And if you start showing symptoms of rabies, there is like over 95% chance that you're gonna die. And the 95% kind of scary. And I was like, okay, I'll come in, I'll come in. So he actually had to report this to public health and to get the serum for me. Okay, the serum. All right, so I cannot go in right away. He said, we just wait, I'll call public health and then I'll call you when the serum is ready. So it was ready that afternoon. I went in and I received 5 shots on that day. Okay, so one shot at the bite wound, that was the serum, and then another serum in the arm, and then I also got a rabies vaccine, as well as tetanus vaccine. Okay, tetanus, because apparently the saliva of the dog can contain the virus, the bacteria that causes tetanus. You know, tetanus is called lockjaw, right? It causes you to freeze up and you cannot relax, right? So I got those shots, and then I have to go back every week for 1 month to receive additional serum. Okay. As you can tell, I didn't die from rabies. I didn't catch the rabies. There was no symptoms. It was mostly, I put a treatment here, but it's more like prevention slash treatment. Okay. If you did get the virus, then it would have, help you treat it. If you didn't get it, then it's more like a prevention. Okay. So here, e.g., rabies, okay, or hepatitis. Hepatitis. Okay, so there you go. My story of the day. Beside dogs, what else do you have to worry about that can give you rabies? Like what kind of animals you have to watch out for? Some of these might be in your home. Bats. That's right. Okay, bats. Bats are scary. Okay, sometimes they find their way into your home, and hopefully they're not like living all over your attics. But if you see a bat, you gotta catch it or call someone to catch it. Because if you go to sleep, you don't know the bats might bite you and you won't even realize it, and that could cause a rabies. Another quick story. When I was dating my wife in our 20s, one night she called me is in the middle of like 2 a.m. She's like, "You gotta come over." I was like, "Why?" So there is a bat in the house, and I need you to catch it. And then I was like, I can't come over now, right? Just call animal control in the morning. She was kind of upset about that, I guess. Anyway, so she hung up, and then the next morning I called her back, and then she told me she ended up catching it herself, right? She says she saw the bats kind of like hanging at the window, and then she just got a big garbage can and kind of trap it that way, right? So if you see a bat, you gotta deal with it, okay? Don't go to sleep with the bats in your house. So there you have it, different kinds of im different ways to activate your adaptive immunity. Some are long term, some uh, not so much. Okay, we're almost there. Let's go back to the PowerPoint slides and finish up with a few other things. Okay, this is a long question here. I'll just give you the answer, and you can look through it yourself. We can talk more about it later if you have questions. Okay, so this is B. Okay, how about this one? Okay, well, this one I want you to do. Okay, so this was actually true. Earlier on, when they didn't have an effective treatment, they tried to collect plasma from recovered patients because that's where you might find the antibodies, right? And they would try to inject these, purify these antibodies, and give it to other infected patients. So this would be an example of, well, first of all, you will have to inject these things into other people. Anytime you're injecting something, it is not going to be natural, right? And is it going to be active or passive? Well, you're trying to inject the antibodies into these people. So those people who are receiving it are not making their own. If they're not making their own, then it is going to be passive. Okay? It turned out this was not an effective treatment because they were never able to get a high enough dose concentration of the antibodies, and it was not pursued. Okay. Just before the next slide. How many pathogens, okay, pathogens to say, not diseases, because not all diseases are caused by pathogens, but how many pathogens do you think humans have eradicated? Eradicated means completely gotten rid of in the history of mankind, right? How many pathogens have we completely destroyed? Throw me some numbers, guys. Okay, I have some private message coming in. Some are saying one, some are saying none. Two. Anyone else? Do we have more optimistic people here? How many diseases have 200? Ooh, there is an optimistic answer. Yeah, seven. Okay, sadly, we only have conquered one pathogens. One, okay, and it is smallpox. Smallpox. Okay. So there are different kinds of pox viruses. You already know chicken pox, right? Chicken pox is not particularly deadly. It's very itchy, but it's not something you would die from. Certainly not nowadays. And then there is smallpox, which is very, very deadly. And recently, you might have heard of another pox. Anybody? It was on the news. Not so much this year, but like last year, it was like
Monkey,
something of concern. You
the
might
monkey,
have. Which one was that? I'm sorry.
monkey.
Yes, the monkeypox, right? So there are all these pox viruses, and they're all kind of related in the sense that they belong to the family Variola virus. And smallpox is very, very contagious and very deadly. Most people with smallpox do recover, but it is deadly in the sense that 30% of it will die. 30% is a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, 3 out of 10, but compared to other diseases, like that's very high mortality. And even people who recover from it, sometimes they have very permanent scars. The next image is, a little bit disturbing. Warning. So right here, this is a girl who recovered from it, and you can see the scar is very extensive on the body, right? So it's not a good condition to catch. So there was this guy. His name was Edward Jenner. He was an English doctor and he lived in this house with farmers and maids, so I guess he was pretty well off. And the story goes like this, right? He noticed that his milkmaids, which are the people who milk the cows for him, he noticed they got cowpox from the cows. Okay, so this is what cowpox looks like. Right? There was a cow. This is for real. Okay, this is a story according to Wikipedia, but I've read about it elsewhere too. Right? But he had a cow named Blossom, and Blossom had cowpox. Okay? And cowpox are these little sores that kind of grows on the udder. Udder is where you squeeze the cow for the milk. Okay, so when the milkmaid squeeze the milk from the infected cows, they catch the cowpox. Okay. So he noticed that people who got the cowpox and recover from it seemingly are not affected by smallpox. Okay. So he had a theory. Right? His theory was that if you recover from cowpox, you will get protection from smallpox. Okay, you guys with me? Smallpox is the one that will kill you, okay? Potentially kill you. Cowpox is the harmless one. So he's theorized that if you get cowpox, then it will protect you from smallpox as well. So from what I taught you today, you might be skeptical about that theory, right? Because I said one antibody for one pathogen. right? The protection you get from one disease is not necessarily going to work for another, right? But he was lucky. He was lucky that the cowpox and the smallpox are similar enough that, in fact, if you do get protection from smallpox, you will also have, sorry, if you get protection from cowpox, you will also get protection from smallpox. So, anyways, how did he prove his theory? So the milkmaid was Sarah. Okay, so that's where he saw the observation, right? Getting the cowpox and the protection from the smallpox. So he took his gardener's son, okay, the 9-year-old boy named James. He didn't take his own son. He took the gardener's son, and he gave the boy the cowpox. Okay, using materials extracted from Sarah, gave the boy cowpox, and the boy recovered. Okay, so nowadays you can't do this, right? Like that's not ethical at all. You're gonna go to jail and get locked up, right? And then the next thing he did was really crazy. He exposed the boy to smallpox multiple times, right? And see if he's gonna get infected. Uh, and fortunately for the boy, he did not. Okay, so that's where the first vaccination concept uh, was created. Okay, so smallpox was eventually eradicated because after everybody gets vaccinated for smallpox, there's no more host for smallpox to spread, and the disease is completely gone since 1977. All right. They keep a copy of smallpox. I read it in two places. They kept one copy in the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, and I think there's another copy in Russia. I don't remember exactly where. In case, right? In case you need it for research or something. But of course, there's concern of bioterrorism and all that stuff. Okay, so that is smallpox, and the cow, the blossom, right? That helped with this whole process thanks to its cowpox contraction. It started this whole process. So after the cow died, they make the hide into like a leather, and it was given to Canada as a gift from the Britain. I forgot when, but it's displayed in University of Toronto, right? So if you go downtown next time, feel free to hunt this thing down and take a selfie with it maybe. So that's smallpox, right? And that's the only one that we were able to eradicate, right? Nothing else. We are very close with polio. Bill Gates, you might know him. He has a foundation, the Melinda, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with his ex-wife now, I guess. They are really big on trying to develop the polio vaccines and try to eradicate it. It's very, very close. There are only, I think, 5 cases last year. Okay, if we're able to continue to distribute these things, then hopefully we're going to be able to eradicate another one. What about the plague? Yeah, the plague is not eradicated. It's still being there is still a natural reservoir for it, like in mice, sorry. And we haven't been able to get rid of it yet. But every now and then it might pops up, but it's like many diseases, right? It comes and goes. And there's not a vaccine for everything, right? Um, so for those that doesn't have vaccines, it's harder to eradicate. All right, we're gonna wrap up the lesson with a few other stuff. We're gonna talk about 3 situations. Number one, overreaction for your immune system. Number two, underreaction. And number three, wrong reaction. So it's either reacting too much, not reacting enough, or reacting in the wrong way. And we're going to look at some examples of these. This is an X-ray picture of a hand, and needless to say, that looks very painful. What condition might cause that? Anybody know? 2 words. First word starts with R. Okay, this is rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis. It's different from osteoarthritis, which is the one that you get from aging. This one is autoimmune disease, okay, where the joint get attacked the joints get attacked by your own white cells, and it causes deformation of these of your fingers and other joints, and it hurts a lot. So that would be an example of wrong kind of reaction. Okay, let's look at overreaction first. Overreactions are what's responsible for seasonal allergies. It's basically your body overreacting to otherwise harmless stuff. Pollens is not supposed to be dangerous, okay? But some people are hypersensitive to it, so it causes you to have, watery eyes and runny nose and all those unpleasant symptoms that are associated with allergies. You can be allergic to a wide range of stuff, okay? Pollens, animal hair, right? Certain kinds of food, right? All these kind of allergies. Uh, if it's a mild case, it would just be like annoying, okay? But in some cases, it could be life-threatening, right? Because certain things can trigger really extreme reaction in some people. Things like nuts, bee stings, or even medication like penicillin can trigger what's called anaphylactic shock. In an anaphylactic shock, your entire system is undergoing a severe allergic reaction, mainly caused by systemic release of histamine. And as you know, histamine trigger vasodilation and increases permeability, right? So if your whole system is flush with histamine and all the blood vessels are dilating, your blood pressure will drop significantly, and that could be life-threatening. Okay. So what do you give to someone who is experiencing an anaphylactic shock? You need to give them an injection of epinephrine. Okay, epinephrine is same as adrenaline. It's the same word. Okay, and that's what the EpiPen is for. The epinephrine will counteract the effects of histamine, and it will basically revive the person. Okay, reverse the effect and cause them to be okay. They still probably should go to the ER to get it checked out, but people with a nut allergy like kids, right? They have to have an EpiPen with them, and you need to leave one at the school as well. I think like what 7, 8 years ago there was an outage of EpiPen in the US, and they all came up to Canada and buy it, and then we end up having a shortage as well, right? These things are not cheap, and they have an expiry date, right? So, but it's necessary for saving someone's life. People can die from an anaphylactic shock if they don't receive the EpiPen injection. Just something interesting that I read about. Did you know if you get bitten by this tick, it's called a Lone Star tick? Lone Star, like Texas, the state in the US, the Lone Star tick. If you get bitten by this tick, then you can't eat meat anymore. You can't eat meat. You become allergic to meat. Okay, so this was on the news. I saw it one night, and this guy was he hunts, okay, for fun, and after he hunts his games, he would keep this in the freezer, like all these game meats, right? And then he's basically built up like a big fridge of these game meats that he would enjoy later. Okay, but one time when he went on hunting, he get bitten by one of these things, and now he cannot eat meat anymore. Okay, it gives him like severe allergic reaction. So his whole fridge, he was so sad. He kept talking about the fridge in the interview. He's like, oh, I can't eat all these meat. I can't believe it. Right? It took me so long to collect this, all these meats, right? Like deer and I don't know, bears or whatever, right? Now he cannot eat it. So that's the Lone Star tick. I think there's a clip on YouTube about this. Just search Lone Star tick and allergies, and you can watch it if you're interested. Yep, it's worse with the red meat, definitely. Okay, so that's overreaction. Now we're going to talk about wrong kind of reaction. We're almost done. Okay, hang in there, guys. Autoimmune disorder. These are situations where your T cells or antibodies attack your own cells. Okay, remember the T cells need to pass the tolerance test in the thymus before they can come out. If they recognize your own cells, you're supposed to kill them off before you allow them to come out of the thymus. But sometimes that system fail and they end up coming out and they attack your own cells. So there are a whole bunch of autoimmune disorders. You might have heard of some of these things, right? Lupus, vitiligo, where you lose skin pigments, psoriasis, right? Um, a bunch of these things, multiple sclerosis. It appears that there is a genetic component to autoimmune diseases, but not always. Here is an example that we will come back to it later on in the course. It's called Graves' disease. You have autoreactive antibodies that binds to your thyroid gland, and it causes your thyroid to keep on producing thyroid hormone. Okay. And all these excess thyroid hormone cause your metabolism to increase drastically. So you will have weight loss, even though you're eating, you will have, tachycardia, very fast heart rate, sweaty palms, and then, your eyes will be bulging a little bit. That's what this means. Okay. Ophthalmopathy, because the antibodies are binding to muscle around the eyes, causing it to become inflamed. You don't really have to memorize the details, right? This is just an example of autoimmune. Lastly, we have immunodeficiency. Immunodeficiency is an underreaction, okay? So there are two kinds of immunodeficiency. Either is primary or secondary. Primary means you are born with the condition, okay? An example of that is called severe combined immunodeficiencies, or SCID for short. Let me talk about that one first. Has anybody heard of the Bubble Boy before? Hey, Bubble Boy was actually made into a movie, okay? You can Google it later on if you want. So this boy was born with SCID, okay? Severe combined immunodeficiency, meaning he has no immunity at all, okay? He's not the only one. People are still being born today with SCID, okay? But we have the technology to treat them better now. And what happens is, because he have no immunity, he would have got infected just by normal exposure to the air. Okay. So they couldn't have let the boy grow outside of a sterile environment. Right? So NASA, like the space people, helped develop this bubble for the boy to live in, for the baby to live in. Okay. These holes are basically for like the parents and the doctors to interact with the boy, and they have to like wear the gloves basically through the holes here, right? And so the boy keep on living in this bubble until he was around 11 or 12, I think. Okay. So by the time he was 11 and 12, they were able to perform a bone marrow transplantation from his sister. Okay. So if you think about it, right? Like if you can't make any white cells, it's because your bone marrow has a mutation, right? So by replacing the bone marrow with from a donor, the new bone marrow should replenish your body with white cells and cure the disease, right? Okay. So that's what they did. They transfused the boy with sister's bone marrow, and the boy initially got better, but then he got very ill very quickly after that. And actually, they found out that he had developed leukemia and ultimately died from it. Okay, so what happened was, again, long story short, you can read this up later. There is something called EBV, okay, which stands for Epstein-Barr virus. Okay, and this virus tends to hide in people's hide in people's bone marrow. Okay, and normally, in a healthy individual, the immune system is able to keep it in check and suppress the virus. But sometimes the virus can activate if the immune system is weakened, and it could cause leukemia. Right? So what happens was the sister actually had the Epstein-Barr virus, but she was able to keep it at bay because she has normal immune system. But then when the bone marrow transplant was done and was given to the boy, the virus was reactivated because the boy didn't have a strong enough immune system to keep it suppressed. And so that's how he contracted the virus and died from the leukemia. So that's the bubble boy. Nowadays, we try to use gene therapy to cure SCID, and there are some success to the therapy. Okay, lastly, AIDS, which is acquired immunodeficiency caused by the HIV virus. Okay, so that's a secondary immune deficiency. The person is not born with AIDS, they caught it. Okay, because they were exposed to the HIV virus. And what makes AIDS uh, uh, dangerous, I guess, the virus. What makes HIV virus, rather? Sorry. What makes HIV dangerous is that the virus infects macrophages, APCs, and helper T cell. So when a person has the HIV virus, it cripples the macrophages and APCs, and therefore the person will not be able to activate the acquired immunity. Okay. You have the innate immunity, some of it anyways. Okay. But you cannot activate the adaptive immunity. You cannot produce the antibodies. You cannot get the killer T cells and the plasma cells. And so you basically cannot fight off serious infection. Okay? You and I catch a common cold, no problem. We can fight it off. But people with HIV, they cannot fight it off. So even minor infection is going to cause them to become very, very ill and potentially cause them to die from those infections. Okay, so HIV is the virus, and AIDS is the result of the virus. Okay. Uh, I'll just briefly tell you one more thing because it's interesting. Some people cannot get AIDS. Okay, there is a special receptor on the surface of these cells called the CXCR4 receptor, and the virus, the HIV virus, needs that receptor to get into the cell. Okay, some people have a mutation in this receptor, and the HIV virus does not recognize it anymore, and they cannot get AIDS. All right. So there was a case where the person had AIDS, okay, and then he needed a bone marrow transplantation for something else, and then he went ahead and did the transplantation with bone marrow from a donor, and then surprisingly to the doctor, he was cured of AIDS after the bone marrow transplantation. So what happened was, it just happens that the donor who was giving the bone marrow, he had that mutation on this CXCR4, right? So after the bone marrow was given to the AIDS patient, right, all the new cells that are coming out is not going to be affected by the HIV, and he essentially got cured from AIDS. Okay, so his name was Timothy Ray Brown, I think. You can look him up if you're interested. Right, so this is a very rare occurrences, right? Not only the mutation itself is really rare, okay, less than 1% of people have it, and for it to be a suitable donor for bone marrow transplantation, that's also extra rare, right? Okay, that is it, guys. Just I guess this is one last question here. Which of the following is an example of autoimmune disease? If you have been paying attention, hopefully you would know it's Graves' disease, the one with the inflamed eyes, and then the thyroid keeps on pumping out thyroid hormones. That's it. You survived the hardest lecture of the whole unit. Okay, we're gonna do lecture 4 on Wednesday, and that one is a walk in the park. It's quite easy. Okay, remember to print the notes and the study guides. Thank you so much for sticking around. See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye, sir.